Hey, it's Jeb Blount Jr., and today we're bringing you the best of Q1 2025 on the Sales Gravy podcast. Let's start things off with the one thing that separates top performers from the rest. The harder you work, the luckier you get. Tony Morris says it best, so listen in.
So let's go back to your dad. So your dad's at IBM.
Yep.
And back then, IBM was known as the birthplace of great salespeople. The best sales training was IBM. If you could sell for Big Blue, you were the best of the best.
Absolutely.
So you watch your dad practicing. Was that part of their culture? Was that to keep your job or to be the best at your job, you had to keep practicing? Or was that just something that was inside of your dad's character and who he was?
I think it was that. My dad always said to me, I'll never ever, he passed away, bless him, 18 years ago, but he always said, the harder you work, the luckier you get. And I now know he got it from the golfer Gary Player, but he said, what you put in is what you get out. And that just always sticks with me. And he said, Tony, you don't have to be the greatest. You've got to be the hardest grafter. So I grew up with that. My dad had a good living. He enjoyed his job. He was in the pharmacology sector of IBM. He did well. But for me, it was about graft. And that's the biggest takeaway I had.
You mentioned Gary Player. And I'm going to paraphrase this, but there was a patron once who commented, gosh, I wish I could hit a shot like that. And Gary Player responded, this is not his exact words, but he basically said, be careful what you want, because in order to hit a shot like that, you've got to go back and hit 1,000 shots every single day, and you're going to spend more time practicing the shots than you actually spend time actually playing. And I don't think a lot of people recognize when you're watching someone at a professional level, whether it's in sales or in golf or anywhere else, the amount of practice that goes into it to get there.
It's funny, there's a book called Bounce, Matthew Said, who was a professional table tennis player, British under 12. And people used to say to him, you are so gifted. And he said, I appreciate the compliment, but you don't see me practicing 18 hours a day and I sleep with a table tennis bat. That's a fair comment, right?
It's true. I think it's, you think about all the things you want to master in your life. It just takes a long time. I had the same thing. People are like, they come to me and go, how do you write these books? How do you write so many books? I'm like, you don't see the hours and hours and hours that I spent. And yes, 16 books in, I've got a rhythm that I've learned. You didn't see the very first book I wrote that was not a very good book. And it took me 6 months of editing to come up with 20,000 words that were not very good. You didn't see that. Like, you didn't see all the failures. You didn't see the amount of time that I spent agonizing over the words, because it takes that amount of time and practice and effort to get to that place.
Absolutely.
Marketing gets you leads, but if you can't close, you're just making money for your competitors. Sales isn't optional. It's a skill every entrepreneur needs. So let's listen in to Dawnna St. Louis.
I see that your background, you obviously help a lot of entrepreneurs like Dre.
Yeah.
And that seems to be a great focal point of yours and your partners. So if I was an entrepreneur, if I was starting my own business today, and we actually have a lot of those in our community at Sales Gravy, and a lot of listeners to this podcast, what are some of the things? What are some of the potholes that you can see around the corner for them, and what are some of the techniques and tricks that you would provide them, the tips that you would give them if you were maybe newly minted or thinking about starting a business for yourself?
So, one of the things that I talk a lot about is kind of like the differences between how men come out and how women come out, just so people can understand when I give advice that sometimes I'm going to give advice and I'm going to be very specific to a certain gender just because they're doing things differently. Here's the one thing that I can tell you for sure. Before you go and hang out that shingle, right? Before you go do that, the first thing that you want to do is learn how to sell. And I know that sounds like extremely self-serving, but I swear it's not. And let me tell you the difference. When we work with a lot of experts who come out of the box, the first thing they want to do is they want to hang their shingle. And they're like, if I build it, they will come. And then they find that they're spending all this money in marketing and advertising, things they weren't expecting to do. And all of a sudden they realize that they're getting leads that they can't close. They thought they were going to be a glorified order taker. The ones that we see that are the most successful generally started with a sales background. And then they figured out how to be an expert. And then they figured out how to market, right? So the ones that are the most successful know how to sell. They can pretty much sell anything. So I would say start there, learn how to sell, regardless of what it is. I don't care if you're selling ice or if you're selling pill bottles or if you're selling your expertise. Learn how to sell first, then leverage your expertise, but don't hang out that shingle before you know how to sell.
If your website is confused, you lose. It's that simple. Buyers won't stick around to figure out what you do. Sam Dunning explains why clarity wins deals.
When it comes to your homepage, there's a really good test coined by a chap called Donald Miller, great book called Building a Story Brand. The test is called a grunt test. And what that means is imagine a caveman sitting in his cave in caveman times, wrapping up warm, trying to get as warm as he can. It's freezing outside. He's just tried to hunt his dinner, and someone's just chucked in front of him a laptop. He's rubbing the dust out of his eyes, wondering what the heck this thing is. Someone fires up your website. It's the first website. It's the first laptop he's ever seen. Someone fires up your homepage. And could that caveman, within a few seconds of landing on your homepage, grunt exactly what you do, how it helps him, why you, and then easily learn more? So within a few seconds, could he grunt those things? What you do, how it helps them, why he should consider you, and how to learn more. And most B2B websites don't hit that mark. You land on, especially in tech and SaaS, you land on their homepage and it says stuff like, the all-in-one revenue platform to turbocharge revenues and grow your sales pipeline. And that's even a good example. Like, some are worse than that. You land on that hero area or that banner area at the top, and it's like, this is a lot of jargon and buzzwords. I have literally no idea what you do. Another statement from that chap is, if you confuse, you lose. And it couldn't be more relevant with websites. Like, the amount of websites that are unclear on their messaging, the problems they solve, the jobs they help you get done, and the value you bring to the table is just astounding. Often gets tarnished by investors, exec teams, etc. Everyone want to sprinkle their own ideas into the pot. So being able to be crystal clear as soon as someone lands on your homepage, like what you do, how it helps them, why they should consider you, and how to take that next step.
This is a concept that's, it's prevalent in everything. So like sales professionals as well. So if you're still listening to this podcast as an individual contributor, you do this with email. Like when you see a prospecting email from somebody and it's 4 paragraphs long explaining what they do, and it's a bunch of word salad. And I do this when I build websites. I did it this morning. I got a note from our CEO, Jeb Sr. He said, this was crap. And it was just a bunch of nothing. And it was. I wrote a bunch of nothing. And I think what the challenge is that human beings, I think it's called Friedrich's Law, have this lovely ability to take something simple and make it very complex for no reason at all. And what you're describing is, okay, and what Donald Miller is describing is, look, can a caveman grunt this? Is it easy to consume? If you can, is it non-confusing? You land on the page and everything works. Left to their own devices, most reps won't pick up the phone. The best leaders create structure and accountability. In our best Ask Jeb of the quarter, Jeb shares with Paul Vergara the simple way to make sure the calls get made.
If you had all your people together, that's what you would do. You would go get your desk and your computer and put it right in the middle of the sales floor, and everybody would go, and maybe you would dial a few too. In a remote situation, it feels like that's hard to do, but it's really not. You've got all of this technology, so you can connect people in El Salvador and Utah and Rancho. You can connect everybody together with you. You put everybody on camera, and you run a call block. Now, the only thing that's different here is unless everybody's got their microphones on, then you won't actually know whether they're actually prospecting or they're calling their grandma. You won't know.
Yeah, I ran into that issue because
Yeah.
I could be on Google Meet, but he could make it. I guess I would have to listen to what he was saying,
Yeah.
but at least I know he's doing it.
At least you know he's doing it. Right, exactly. So what I would do is, if you just to get started with a habit, is pick maybe 1 or 2 days a week where you get everybody together first thing in the morning, and work with the time changes. I'm not sure where El Salvador is on time zone wise.
2 hours from California and the same hour as Utah. So
Okay, good. So
basically-
just pick 10 o'clock in the morning, essentially, for maybe 10 o'clock for them, be 8 o'clock in the morning for you. So just pick that period of time and say, we're going to run call blocks. Now, I expect you to start at 8. We're going to do this together. We're going to get everybody together. I need you to be ready with your list, and we're going to chop wood. and we're going to run it for 10 minutes, and we're going to stop, and everybody's going to report in. What'd you do? And you can get a whiteboard behind you, and you can say, dials, contacts, appointments, deals
I
closed.
love that.
Yep.
That's good.
And you run it.
That's good.
Now, you can do it every single day, but it's going to take a lot of discipline on your end because you got a lot of things happening, and it's easy for you to get distracted. But on the other hand, there's nothing wrong with putting them all on camera and you just do your work and they're going. And then if you're like on Google Meets, if you can tap into the one person you want to listen to, you just put them on and just listen to them. And so you can go around the horn. But if you just started with 1 day a week, at least you're setting the expectation that this is what we're going to do and how we're going to do it.
Great teams compete, challenge, and push each other. And if you're not stepping on toes, you're just not moving fast enough. Charley Bible explains why friction fuels growth.
What's your best advice for leaders who are in these messy worlds where there's multiple channels and you're trying to get the right customer to the right person at the right time to deliver that experience? What's your best advice for leaders, especially executive leaders who are in these situations, for keeping the wheels on the bus and keeping everything moving forward while you try to navigate how to organize your teams to best take advantage of not only market conditions, but opportunities?
So, I tell my teams, I said, look, if you all aren't stepping on each other's toes occasionally, y'all aren't dancing hard enough. Right?
That's good advice.
So I mean, it's gonna happen. Whenever one of my sales leaders says, well, we don't want to go after this because this person's working this market, and it's like, okay, well, just because we have a couple of salespeople working Nashville doesn't mean that the inside salespeople shouldn't outbound every single Nashville, Tennessee contact in our system. You know what? If there's a little bit of overlap, we'll resolve it, And how the resolve happens is you have to have your leaders on the same page saying, hey, we're all going to go try really, really hard. When conflicts happens, we're going to work through it. And we're going to work through it in looking through two lenses. What is best for the customer and what is best for KTOM as a whole? So if we make a decision that is what is best for the customer and what is the best for the company as a whole, generally we resolve something amicably and we make the right decision and everybody involved understands. There's been situations where, I had two different people working on something and it comes time for the $500,000 PO to be sent in, and you can't split the baby down the middle, but you can compromise. You can compromise payout to two people on something. So there's ways of resolving these issues, but in my mind, if we're always thinking what is the best decision for the customer and what is the best decision for the company, not the individual segment, not all of those things, then we're going to get to the right place.
Now it's on you. Take something from today and put it into action. If this episode hit home, send it to a teammate, subscribe, leave us a 5-star review, and keep learning. We'll catch you next time on the Sales Gravy Podcast.
Hey, I'm doing a happy dance because you watched this video. Make sure that you click like and subscribe so that you never miss one of our amazing sales training videos.